Parenting is a free resource, and support for this podcast comes from listeners like you. Your contribution helps cover the many costs associated with the production, hosting, and post-production of the show. This is an ad-free podcast, and donations are greatly appreciated. To make a one-time donation in any amount that you desire, or make a monthly donation, go to authenticparenting.com/support. Thank you for your generous and kind support. It means the world to me. I am Anna Seewald, and this is Authentic Parenting, a podcast about growing ourselves while raising our children. I'm a psychologist, educator, and parent coach. And on this podcast, I explore how you can connect to your authentic self, practice radical self-care, and raise emotionally healthy children. Let's break the cycle of generational trauma for a more peaceful, kind, and compassionate world. Today, I am joined by my dear friend, colleague, and occasional co-host, Dr. Laura Froyen, host of the Balanced Parent podcast. It's always a pleasure doing these episodes with her. Usually, Laura and I answer listener parenting questions, and over the years, we have done many such episodes. But for today's show, we decided to talk about a particular topic, gentle parenting and its perils. This is a topic that is top of mind for me, and I have been meaning to cover it on the show for quite some time. I was pleased that Laura was eager to dive into this subject with me. For the most part, Laura and I share similar views when it comes to parenting. But today we had our first disagreement. Oh, you have to stay tuned for that moment. I think this episode's title is pretty self-explanatory, so I'll skip a lengthy intro. But one thing I'll mention is that as parents, our words contain so much power. Children are looking at us for guidance, and how we phrase and frame things can have a huge impact. With our words, we create their reality, shape their narrative about themselves. Words have power. I have been observing certain parenting trends in our culture that I wanted to speak up about. Has gentle parenting gone too far? And is it too soft and gentle? What are the harms of gentle parenting? And what could we do to remedy the situation? Please enjoy, and thank you for listening. Don't forget to hit that follow button for future episodes. Well, Laura, I am so delighted and overjoyed to see your beautiful smile again and record this episode.
Oh, same, Anna. I love coming to talk with you on your show. It's always such a fun time. You know, that having left academia a while ago, the thing I miss most is my colleagues. And I'm so excited when I get to talk with you're like my favorite colleague. So I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, that makes me so happy. I know. I love that you consider me your colleague and a friend.
Yes.
I invited you to talk about the harms, the dangers of gentle parenting, and maybe that's a bit of a harsh title. I want us to begin this conversation by mentioning several approaches, several trends in parenting, right? One of them is gentle parenting. What is gentle parenting? Do you personally identify with that approach? Do you use that word to describe your own parenting? I'm curious.
Yeah. So I feel like there's a few buzzwordy types of parenting out there, right? So there's respectful parenting, gentle parenting, conscious parenting, authentic parenting. And I don't know that we all the average person out there has a consistent definition for it. And I don't know that the professionals using the terms do either, right? So none of these terms are researched terms, right? That have had a group of researchers operationalize them and tell us exactly what they mean,
Yeah. I mean, so there is gentle parenting, which is not a research discipline or approach. It's just popularized term. And I looked into this. Some woman named Sarah, you can Google her name. I think she wrote a few books. She's from the UK, I believe. She's from Europe for sure. She's written several books on gentle parenting. She's not a psychologist or, any related child development professional. She's just a mom, I believe. And she started using that word and people started popularized. It became popularized. I personally don't identify with gentle parenting. I never tell my friends that I'm using gentle parenting with my daughter. It didn't resonate with me. And what I do is not, yeah, I am gentle, but it's not gentle parenting.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk for a second about that because I also don't identify as a gentle parent. I definitely have people in my community who do, in my personal like friend group and colleagues who identify as gentle parenting coaches or educators. But I agree, it's kind of a nebulous term, and I'm not always sure what it means. And so I'm kind of curious about like what you perceive it means, what I perceive it means, what the general public thinks it means, and then also what the educators think it means. Because I think that there is a miscommunication, like a breakdown on kind of what the people who are really espousing gentle parenting think it means, and then how it's communicated, and then even again how it's put into practice. Do you know what I'm saying? So can you tell me a little bit about like what you think it means, and I can share what I think it means?
Well, I know as a professional, what the way I understand what it means is no punishments. That's the gentle part. That's how I understand. And more attuned to your child's needs and feelings and validating and listening. So, those two components, in my opinion, is what is known as gentle parenting. What I observe in people who do gentle parenting is too much of the emotional stuff, overemphasis, magnifying even the emotional moments in their children's world. That's what I see. Too much over involvement with emotions and quote unquote validation, too much obsession with that, lack of structure and boundaries, and what I can call is permissive parenting. That's what I see happening with people who identify as gentle parents. And I mean, I can go far to even say, and I'm going to get backlash about this, that this permissive parenting can go way, way too far. I know a lot of quote unquote gentle parents who have no structure whatsoever to their day, to their life. They are just gentle and open and flowy. The kids can be up at 11 p.m., on their iPads. The kids dictate what they want to do, how they want to do. Like a 4-year-old cannot be up at 11 o'clock and the next day at a different time. Like they need routines and structure. We are the parents. That's a health and safety issue. It's like you can't ask your 4-year-old, what time would you like to go to bed?
Yeah, I mean, the 4-year-old isn't capable of making a judicious and informed decision about their bedtime, right? I mean, and so I think too that for many of the gentle parents that I know, there is I just want to have so much compassion for them because I think many of them grew up in homes where they felt unseen and unheard, and that their emotional experience or their experience at all wasn't valid or appreciated in their homes. And so I think so many gentle parents are coming from that place of wanting to make sure that their kids feel seen and heard and loved and valued in their homes. And I think you and I both agree like that is a good thing for kids to experience. But in that, especially the folks who've maybe come to work with me, who've been kind of realize, okay, maybe I went too far on the gentle parent side and I need to come back and figure out how to set some boundaries. What I realize about them is many of them are I'm trying to say this well, they really are uncomfortable with their children's negative emotions. And they really want to make sure that their children are happy as much as possible. And of course, we want our kids, to be happy. But for me, I don't want my kids to just be happy. I want my kids to have a full human experience, to experience the full range of human emotions. And that means if they live a full, vibrant life, which is what I want for my kids, they're going to experience sadness and disappointment and frustration. They're going to experience that negative end of the spectrum. And I don't want to deny them that. And I think that a lot of folks who really are attracted to gentle parenting come from that place of not wanting to deny them, but being really uncomfortable with those negative emotions. They don't know how to hold space for them within themselves. And they definitely don't know how to hold space for them within their kids, and are uncomfortable in sitting in their child's, disappointment for not being able to have the extra cookie, or, separation anxiety of needing to go to bed. Like, it's very normal for a 3-year-old to experience separation anxiety at bedtime. That doesn't mean we don't have them go to bed. That means we learn to sit with them and we tell them, I am not afraid of those big feelings, and you don't need to be afraid of them either. And we're going to sit with them, and we're not going to just make them go away because they're big and scary. You know what I'm saying? So that's one of the things that I really feel like gentle parenting, I think it is a natural and understandable desire, that parents have to want their kids to be happy, to not experience tears and sadness and crying. And I think it starts young, when the kids fall down, we immediately, scoop them and breastfeed them, and there's this kind of stuffing of emotions that happens right away. Do you know what I'm saying? Not that there's anything wrong with those things, but it's about conscious and intentional choices and knowing what we're doing. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I just talked a lot.
Yeah. No, you didn't. And I'm glad, like, I'm a little more critical, in my language, because I see it's gone way too far and it's doing more harm than good. So, but before I'm going to give you an example. This is a real example. I worked with a client, and this example sparked this whole thing in me. But before we get to this example and discussing all the aspects, let's talk about a little bit peaceful parenting, respectful parenting, conscious parenting, right? So we said there is this gentle parenting. There's also peaceful parenting. What is your understanding of that? Because that is also a not studied approach or discipline. It's just a term. Do you think peaceful parenting and gentle parenting are the same thing?
I don't. No. So I think that peaceful parenting and respectful parenting, the people who are generally teaching those approaches, are using the model of authoritative parenting, right? So authoritarian parenting is high on control and low on warmth. Permissive parenting is high on warmth and low on control, which is, I think, where most gentle parents fall. I don't know that they mean to, but I do think that's where they end up. And then peaceful and respectful parenting, there's some differences between the two, but I think they're both trying to fall in that realm of authoritative parenting that is high on warmth, but also high on control. So connection, love, empathy, and boundaries and discipline, not necessarily punitive discipline, but discipline where there are boundaries and expectations and support in meeting those expectations. Yeah. I think between peaceful parenting and respectful parenting, I think peaceful parenting focuses a lot on your own self-regulation. So I think that when folks are teaching peaceful parenting, there's a lot of focus on the parent's ability to be peaceful, and the need for the parent's own peace to come first so that they can hand the peace to the child. I think respectful parenting really hones in on the autonomy and personhood and dignity of the human that they're interacting with, the child, that the children are born deserving of dignity and respect. And so that is really highlighted in respectful parenting.
Can I ask you a question? You just blew my mind. I didn't know the peaceful parenting, like it was all about the parental calm and peacefulness. So thank you for illuminating me. Can I ask you a quick question? Is respectful parenting the right approach?
Yeah. So I think that lots of respectful parents find their way to respectful parenting through RIE, which stands for Resources for Infant Educators. It's the approach that's was founded by Magda Gerber and taught by Janet Lansbury. Just for the listeners, I know you know that, but just, for our listeners who maybe don't. Another big proponent of RIE and respectful parenting is Robin Enzig. She runs a blog called Visible Child and has a very big Facebook group presence. And there is a spectrum of adherence to this kind of child-centric, respectful parenting approach too. So I fall in, I called my podcast Balanced Parenting because I don't want to be on the extremes of anything, right? So I really want to help parents come to a place of feeling settled in their choices as a parent. And I know, I feel like that's one of the reasons why you and I relate so well, because you want parents to come to that same feeling of settledness in who they are so that they can show up authentically, right? And so I feel like both of us are working to kind of take all this information in, distill it down, and help parents filter it through the lens of themselves, and find what's right for themselves and right for their families while, being informed by what we know about child development. Yeah.
Yeah, you said it well. But there's also positive parenting.
Yeah.
Which I think maybe derives from positive discipline.
I think so. And I think positive discipline and positive parenting, I think that those have their roots in behaviorism. So, which is antithetical to what respectful parenting is doing, right? So positive discipline is really focused on positive feedback, rewards, not using any punitive approaches. So the not using punitive approaches is the same within peaceful parenting and respectful parenting. But respectful parenting does not advocate for the overuse of positive reinforcement either. They advocate for really authentic feedback to the child and also the highlighting of the child's own intrinsic motivation. So instead of good for you, you did it, it's wow, you worked so hard on that and you did it. So the energy, the cheerleading is perhaps a little bit different in there.
Yeah. And there's also conscious parenting.
Yeah, which is a totally different thing too, right?
Oh, yes. So what is your understanding of conscious parenting? I'm so dying to know.
I hope everybody knows that to take all of this with a grain of salt. This is just my understanding of kind of reading and listening. This is the stuff I get to nerd out on. If we were talking about special interests, this would be one of my special interests. And this is just all kind of a distillation of my understanding. But conscious parenting, in my understanding, is not actually a set of parenting practices at all. It doesn't teach you to do anything actively with your kids. Conscious parenting is really, truly about the parental experience of being a parent and our own inner growth and journey. So recognizing the reactivity within ourselves or the impulses within ourselves, contextualizing them. Where did we get that idea? And, that maybe kids should be seen and not heard. Where did that come in? How did we experience that? How did we learn that lesson? And is it one we want to intentionally pass on to our kids? And then making choices internally that reflect our values and reflect our own healing. And a big piece of it is making lots of mistakes and reflecting on our mistakes too, So I think you can be a conscious parent and a respectful parent at the same time, right? So the conscious parenting is what allows you to be a respectful parent in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Okay. I'm glad we're aligned. I'm glad you are.
It was like an info dump. I'm sorry.
No, this is really, really helpful. I think this is important and helpful. What I call authentic parenting is not an approach, obviously. It's just this idea of our children are whole and complete and beautiful and innocent and pure. Can we see them for that and not damage or squash their spirit or who they are by meeting their needs and allowing them to blossom into their full potential, into their authentic self, while we wake up and do our own work in order to connect to our own authentic self. Because many of us coming from, more unconscious, parenting, feel disconnected from our own true nature. That's basically my understanding of authentic parenting, what I called it for, but it is a philosophy. And I do align with respectful parenting more based on what you're saying with conscious parenting. But I don't want to confuse people by saying this. I feel like there are too many approaches, too many directions, and it's really confusing for many parents.
It is. And which one's the right one? Which was...
Yes. And which one is the right one? The right one is the one that you practice. The right one is that you are able to do. One of my friends who is not involved in this parenting world, she's just a regular working parent raising 2 kids, and she's amazing. I can see her parenting. She has 2 young children. She has no idea what any of these terms mean. Well, she came to my live event. Everybody's talking about with this lingo, right? This is my crowd. They talk about, oh, when I moved from, authoritarian to gentle parenting. And my friend says, what does that mean? I said, oh my gosh, it's best for you not to even know because you are already parenting in an amazing way. Just, stick the way you're doing it. So I want to ask you, like, so can we perhaps state what's before we get there, before I ask you what is sort of required for effective parenting, in your opinion, I think the only studied approach, right, is from 1970s, 80s, Diana Boomerang's work about authoritarian, authoritative, and did she call permissive parenting in the research? Yeah. So that's the only research based, right? Is that the only one?
Yeah. I mean, so like there's lots of, I mean, so it had its origins there. There's assessments that, that have been given. And so there's lots of, other studies that have used that those kind of categories. And there's also tons of research on punitive or harsh or controlling parenting, corporal punishment, like harsh punishments, shame, harsh excessive criticism, those types of things versus not having that. And then there's tons of research on behavioral interventions, behavioral parenting interventions, timeouts, reward charts, those types of things. The vast majority of the research tells us that the harsh punishment works in the short term to get compliance, immediate compliance, but has negative effects in the long term, more behavior problems, more depression, anxiety, school issues, and actually pretty similar results for behavior-based programs. So definitely more compliance right up front. If that's what your goal is, timeouts and reward charts actually work really well for getting immediate compliance. They don't necessarily work well for developing strong relationships and connection over time.
Then so what is required for good parenting? I mean, effective parenting, not good. Let's say effective parenting.
So I think that one thing that's super important to just highlight that you and I both know is that the research on child development over the past 100 years has overwhelmingly showed that good enough parenting is what kids need. So kids do not need perfect parenting. They do not need us all checking all of these boxes. And in fact, when we are focused so intently on getting everything right, we actually miss the mark more often, right? And so being a little bit of relaxed and easy and just like understanding, like we're talking about like 30% of the time getting it right. Like people who have secure attachments, they have about a 30% success rate at like correctly reading all of the bids and cues for their babies, and they have secure attachment. So like we're really talking about good enough. Yeah. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
You said that, a lot of parents are sometimes obsessed with making it so perfect and not failing, not making mistakes. And there is another harm to that approach: anxiety in children, perfectionism in children. Because if, as a parent, you're working so hard, putting so much pressure on yourself to make everything just right and perfect and not fail and rescue your kids, and no one is making mistakes, wow, like you're raising the bar for your kids to fail miserably mental health wise. Like they're going to be, because they don't know there is room for making mistakes. If they make a mistake, for humanity, they're going to be critical. They're going to be afraid to make mistakes. They're going to be afraid to try new things because there's always the fear of failure, right? And I see this in gentle parents, and their kids are anxious, nervous. They are not well adjusted, competent. They're not well adjusted or explorative,
like willing to take risks and try something yeah.
Willing to take risks. Yes, I see that, unfortunately, by rescuing them, by not allowing them to feel those feelings that you were talking about, by quote unquote making them happy all the time, us being perfect, catering, nurturing, and making everything just so right. It leaves children with zero place to breathe, to fail, to make mistakes, and to understand that this is the human nature. And that's cause for anxiety and mental health conditions in the future.
I agree. And I also think too that there's this other piece of it, right? Like that goes right along with this. When we are frantically attempting to make a relationship perfect, we are unconsciously communicating that that relationship is fragile. We are unconsciously communicating a lack of confidence in the resilience of the relationship, right? So when we are anxious about like doing everything right, we're saying this relationship, we mean to be saying this relationship is important to me, right? So the intention is this relationship matters. I want to get it right. That's where we're coming from. But the underlying communication is, I got to worry about this relationship. I'm like, this relationship isn't a sure thing, you know? And so I got to put a lot of energy into it versus coming from this settled, like, I'm going nowhere. And we are going to make mistakes because we're both humans and we're both figuring this out. This relationship is going nowhere. I've got you, you've got me. We belong together. There is a different energy. And that energy that's settled, grounded, we're going nowhere, allows you to say, I know. Oh man, I know you. It's bedtime. I gave you the opportunity to take a bath and you said you didn't want one then. And now you've changed your mind and it's too late. And that's hard because I've got to put your body to bed because your body needs a rest. Oh, I know this is hard. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And here we go. We're getting into bed. Like versus the like, oh, you wanted a bath? You didn't know? Okay, I love you. You need a bath. Okay, we're getting into the bath. And then the parent gets to bed an hour and a half later than they were supposed to. And then they're snappy the next morning, you know, like it's just it. Anyway, but yes, I agree with you.
Yeah. So one parent gave me this example. A 4-year-old little boy said, Mom is making soup, vegetable soup, yummy, homemade, delicious soup. The child says, I don't want to eat that. I want mac and cheese. Well, fair enough. I mean, kids can eat mac and cheese every day. Let's just face it, right?
And not get sick of it.
Yes, and not get sick of it. But like, what is our role in this parenting? Like, we can't just give them mac and cheese and then complain that they're picky eaters and then not expose them to a variety of things, expand their repertoire of trying new foods. Like, what are we doing here? Pigeonholing ourselves by just catering to their needs? Anyways, so this mom says, no, I put so much effort into making this soup. I want you to try this soup. No, I don't want to eat this soup. And so it escalates into the child is having a tantrum, a meltdown, crying. The father gets involved. The mother says, no one appreciates me. Mom is fighting with the husband now. Like you can't imagine how far this can go, right? It goes.
I totally can. And I mean, yeah.
And so the mother decides, okay, I gotta rescue this situation. Let me offer him a deal. Imagine it's a 4-year-old kid. Sweetheart, if you take one bite out of the soup and you like it, then you can continue eating. If you don't like the soup, you can say, I don't want to, but at least you tried. And then I can make you mac and cheese. And in my mind, I'm like, no, please, no, this is not good. But I'm not saying again.
Yeah. Wait, hold on. Wait, why is it not good?
Why is it not good? Like,
in my opinion, it puts the kid in a position where they can't like the soup.
Yes, you're creating.
Right. In this position, like even if they take the bite and they like it, they can't let themselves like it because they still want the mac and cheese. And it puts the kid in a position where they could potentially be like forced to lie to their parent in order to get what they want. Like it just is.
And it's sort of like this manipulation system going on, like instilling that if you take one bite, no, you eat the soup. This is what's for dinner. And it's not like you are going to go hungry. It's not like let's take it too far, like authoritarian parenting and deprive you of food and things like that. I don't, obviously there is a way of doing it. I think, but this mom, so this kid did exactly what our fears were, right? He took one bite, like, what's going to hurt him? He took just one little, it's a soup, it's little water, right? So he eats and says, I tried, Mommy. Can I have my mac and cheese now? And she thinks she won this negotiation. She says, yes, buddy, you can have your mac and cheese. And I said, no, like if we're talking about winning and losing, he won in this situation. Like she's like, but he tried the soup. Well, not really. So that's one example.
I mean, and there is I just want to have a lot of, Obviously,
Compassion. You're going to bring the compassion because I'm bringing the harshness.
no, it's good. We balance each other, right? And I love you're not bringing harshness, bringing truth, right? You're stripping it all away and seeing things
I'm
clearly.
not sugarcoating this. I'm not sugarcoating this. Yes.
Yes, exactly. I don't want to sugarcoat it either. I do want to just say that like there are kids out there who will starve themselves because they have actual like medical conditions, like, that are related to sensory stuff that makes eating hard for them. Okay. So, there definitely are parents out there who have heard like, oh, they won't starve themselves. No, some kids will. Okay. But then if you know that's what's going on for your kid, you make sure that there's something on the table that they can fill themselves up with. So you're making soup and like they're in a carby phase where they just want the bread, put bread on the table, have some really like
Or put even the mac and cheese. The mac and cheese and the soup even can go together.
like if like this is where my kid's at, like we're just gonna have a big sheet pan of mac and cheese that I get from Costco, and it's just gonna go on the table every day, and everybody can have some mac and cheese. Or like when we do things like this, sometimes my she's 9, she turned 9 today when we're recording this, yay, she still likes deconstructed foods. So she doesn't like foods that are mixed together. There's texture differences that are surprising in her mouth. She has some sensory stuff going on. That's fine. So if I'm making a soup like that, like when I cook the noodles, I just leave some out for her so she can have the noodles separately, but she's still eating, or if like I make chili, she loves chili, but she likes all the parts out of the soup and on a plate. So like that's easy. I just take a scoop of it, strain it, and she separates them, and it's fun. I sometimes give her like the little kitty chopsticks and she separates it out for herself. It's fine. Like it doesn't have to be this big deal, but it's not that. Okay, so Dr. Becky has this example, this analogy that she uses that I really like to like the principle of it, where she's talking about how you are the leader, like you're the captain in an airplane. And when the airplane is going down, you don't want your captain calling back and saying, oh gosh, we're going down. Does anyone think they have better ideas for how to land this flight, land this plane? No, you want your captain to be saying like, I'm sure, I'm steady, I'm a good leader, I know what's going on. Like, yep, this is scary. Yep, this isn't fun. Yep, this isn't what we were expecting, but this is what we're doing. And so I really do like that example from Dr. Becky.
But see, here is the thing. The moment a parent gives their power to the kid who is looking at the parent to lead.
Yeah, I agree.
Things just go array, right?
Well, and the kids know that they're not supposed to be in charge, right?
And they also don't know how to be in charge. Like imagine you go to your doctor and your doctor asks you to do your own surgery. Like,
no, never. But the kids want to be in charge because they are developmentally in a place where they are seeking autonomy. They're seeking to figure out who I am. What is my power in this world? And so there's this balance that the parents have to be in charge of. How do I, in a healthy way, cultivate that sense of autonomy and independence in my child while helping them feel safe, while helping them feel cared for, that there are these boundaries around them, that will keep them safe.
You can nurture your child's autonomy without giving your power away, without assigning them the role of the parent, the executive decision-making abilities. You can't ask your 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old, what should we cook for dinner today?
Yes.
Right? I would stick to my opinion. That is my opinion. You are the parent. You can,
I meal plan with my kids, right? So we sit down, once a month or so and say, like, what are we liking these days? What do we want to have more of? What do we want, and then I still make the decision. But like, we're working together to see what's going on the table, and everyone just serves what they want, and that's fine. I have one kid who only eats cooked vegetables and one kid who only eats crunchy vegetables. They eat the same vegetable. I just don't cook it for the one kid. Do you know what I'm saying? So we're still having the family meals. There's room for individuality and there's leadership too.
Yes, there is. I think what I see a lot these days, the boundaries are blurred. The parents become the kids give too much of their power to their kids. Kids don't know what to do with it. It's more anxiety producing and overwhelming. There's meltdowns and tantrums increase. They don't feel safe. There is no sturdy guidance. There is just like, it can feel really bad for the kids. I'm not saying completely be authoritarian and say, this is what we're eating. If you're not eating, you're going to starve. You have no input. That's not what I'm saying.
I know you're not. Yeah.
But they cannot make all the decisions, the ones that you need to make. That has negative impact on their well-being as well.
I think that they're especially like when we're talking about the gentle parenting approach, I think that there is a desire to avoid the immediate perceived negative impact without a lot of thought to the long game and what the negative impact is going to be down the road, right? So that it's very in the moment, like, let's make them happy, make things smooth and easy, as least resistance as possible here in the moment, without really thinking about like what that's going to set up for later.
Yeah. So I think, in my opinion, gentle parents, like you said in the beginning, the structure, the expectations aspect of parenting, they need to increase, their involvement with that. I can see that's not present in their parenting. Children need structure, children need expectations, they need routines, they need rules. Otherwise it's too chaotic, it's too anxiety producing, too overwhelming. I think there is lack of discipline. And somehow this word discipline gets associated with punishment and it has a bad rap. But discipline is what children need. It's not a bad thing that you say, I usually say non-punitive discipline. So discipline nevertheless, if there is no discipline, it's just there is chaos and it's not healthy for anyone. So the lack of structure and discipline in gentle parents, I noticed that trend. Do you agree with me?
Yeah, I do. I think most of the people who are teaching gentle parenting try to emphasize the need for clear boundaries and limits and want that to be there. I think that oftentimes it gets just a little lost in translation, and there's not necessarily clear ideas for like what that looks like. Most of us grew up, I mean, I'm just making assumptions, but I grew up in a home where physical stuff wasn't used very often, but shame and disappointment like was used a lot to correct my behavior and was very powerful for me, and isolation during emotions, right? And so most of us grew up experiencing similar things, and what it looks like to have discipline that is non-punitive, most of us don't have very many models of what that actually looks like in the moment with our kids. And we don't have a lot of skills in regulating our own emotions too, right? So we're supposed to be super empathetic and present with our kids' emotions, hold space for them. And like, we just don't know how to do that for ourselves, right? So like we do a lot of numbing, a lot of pushing down, a lot of stuffing. So I think that and I think that there are, so there are those parents like your friend who you're like, God, don't even dive in. You're doing fine just on your own, but lots of us don't feel like we can trust our intuitions, right? Because sometimes our intuitions feel harmful because we were harmed, and so I don't know, it's confusing, I think, for I feel overwhelmed diving into those things myself sometimes, too.
I agree. And my friend was raised with corporal punishment. What does she do? She does not use punishment with her children. And she knows that, right? You are alluding to a point that I want to, make now, which is gentle parenting is too much work for the parent.
Yeah, I've been wanting to talk about this too.
It's like exhausting constantly.
I mean, so respectful parenting and these other approaches are more work than timeouts and charts, and they are more active work. But gentle parenting puts the parents so far down the list on who matters. It's exhausting in a completely different way. And it's a recipe for burnout. And I don't think it's good modeling for, I have a client who told me one time that adults are walking advertisements for adulthood. And like, what do we want to be advertising? I just appreciate that thought a lot. And I think that in the gentle parenting world, where adults are encouraged to really put their needs last, really put the comfort and enjoyment and happiness of their children ahead of themselves. And I'm not like, obviously parents sometimes have to put their needs behind their kids, right? Like that's part of the job.
They do. And there is sacrifice needs to be made.
There's sacrifices. Yes, of course. But like I'm talking about not eating all day because you are constantly managing everybody else's happiness and needs, right? Like that we're talking about extreme deprivation of your and denial of your own needs as a human being.
And that brings me to the point, it's like obsessively micromanaging. It becomes a task, which in reality, some things could be not magnified as much in day-to-day life. I feel like gentle parents feel the pressure, the need to respond to every little thing, and that just increases the emotional exhaustion for them. And they also, I feel like when we suppress, repress, not show our own frustration, anger, even with our kids, if your kid does something and you like, recently my daughter did something and I said, I'm really disappointed. Like, you embarrassed me. This is what happened. Like, you want your child to know that you are human, you have feelings, and yes, this is what happens as a result of this situation. But if we portray that we are this gentle, soft, no feelings, I don't know, like that to me is not the real portrayal of it. Just what are we saying to our kids? What's the message there? Don't they need to see, yes, I can disappoint mom, I can frustrate mom, and based on our feedback, maybe they can learn. If your child hits you, let's say your 4-year-old hits you, so they're like, oh, sweetie, da, 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 da. No, ouch, that hurt. Like, give them feedback, not like hit them back and say, how, not that.
How do you like it? No, of course not.
Or let me spit on your face because you spit at your brother. No, no, no. But give them real world feedback and react in a human way, not in a robotic way, so that they can learn and discern. I feel like I see that.
Or even just set the boundary, right? There's so many times that, these beautiful, loving parents, their kids are doing normal kid things like hitting when they're mad, and they will just be holding them, and the kid is hitting, and they're saying, don't hit mama, don't hit mama. And the kid is still hitting. Like, no, take their hands or put them down. I can't let you hit me. I'm a human. I don't deserve to be hit. You can be mad and you can't hit me, like.
Yeah, it's incomplete sometimes. It's too child-centric. Let's just say I am the harsh one today, you're the gentle one. So I'm okay with that. It's too child-centric. And you know what? Let me give this example, because this example just blew my mind. It's a birthday party for this 4-year-old boy. Their families, their cousins, and some friends are there. It's time for cake, and this boy's cousin is sitting on his favorite chair. Well, the boy wants to sit on his chair to eat cake. I think it's his brother's birthday. It's not his birthday. So the boy sort of, obviously he's 4, he doesn't have the language to say, excuse me, I would like to sit on my chair, right? He just comes and sort of pushes the cousin off the chair, like scooches, and just gently, like meanly pushes the kid. And that girl falls, right? The child falls, and oh, it's a disaster. It's a family problem now. Or the mother kneels down and says, sweetheart, I understand you're frustrated. That's your favorite chair. Yes, but your cousin was sitting on it. And they go into, and there are other seats available, right, in there. So they're making this big deal about validating his feelings in that moment. So they neglected the party and the guests and everything. And now they are high focused on this little individual's feelings about the chair. That is not even a feelings related issue, but they're making it by hyper focusing. I know you like that chair. You're disappointed, aren't you? Oh, somebody sat on your chair, blah, 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 blah. Then the father comes in. Then, this mom's sister who doesn't do gentle parenting, she says, oh, come on. There are so many other seats. He can just grab a seat. And this mom is telling me this story, and I'm listening. She's like, my sister doesn't understand that we want to validate our child's feelings, that we didn't grow up that way, that feelings are important, blah, blah, blah. And I said, I'm sorry, but I'm siding on this one with your sister. Maybe that was not the best communication, But I said, do you want to raise a generous kid? Do you want to raise an easygoing kid? Do you want to raise a kid who is not self centered? She's like, yes. I said, great. In that moment, yes, I get it. That's his favorite chair. But so what? Somebody's sitting there and there are other chairs available. Can you guide him to a different chair and make that process easy and not create this think about emotions? There were no emotions. The chair is busy. There is another seat. Let's grab this seat and be hospitable and let someone else sit on your chair. King, your life is going to be the same. Like, don't worry about your favorite chair. Be adaptable, be hospitable and generous. This is not forever. Someone is not taking away your chair. By hyper focusing like that, we create a self centered kid who always thinks about them, their needs, their feelings, does not think about another human being. They feel like their feelings are big and important, where in that moment, there were no feelings even involved. The parents fabricated feelings and put it there, left the party, left everyone and said, little king, you are the most important matter in this moment and your freaking chair. Like, do you see how agitated and passionate I am? This drove me insane, this example. And I see this trend in our culture way too much, like way too much. So what is his favorite chair? Be adaptable, grab another chair. It's not the end of the world. Go be host. Don't be so self-centered. The moment you hyper-focus on their feelings and needs all the time, they become self-centered and just close down. There's something self-centered.
I mean, and 4-year-olds are naturally self-centered. They are naturally self-centered. And it's important for us to understand that, like, okay, so they're building the skill, the social skill of thinking and considering about, considering others' needs. Just because it's natural developmentally for them to be self-centered and focus on what they want doesn't mean that we support them to only focus on what they want. The support and scaffolding they need is to consider others' well-being and other people's needs. So I think like it's okay to say like, oh yeah, you really like that's your normal chair. That's your seat at our table when it's just our family. Right now, we have our whole family here. And your cousin's already in that chair. So here we go. We're going to give the cousin the chair back. I know that's hard, and you'll get your chair, you'll be able to sit in your chair for dinner tonight, like it's.
No, I would even skip that's hard part. I agree with everything you're saying. What's so freaking hard about yielding your chair to someone?
Not be hard for you, but maybe it is hard for this kid.
Oh, come on. I think we're putting language and things in their mind. Yielding your chair, I agree everything what you're saying, except that sentence. No, it's not hard. That is not a freaking hard problem. I think we are creating our children to look for problems where there are no problems. Your cousin is sitting there. Oh, okay. Here is a chair. You can sit next to her. That's it. Like,
so, I mean, as a mom of an autistic child, things like that. Yeah. So things like that are hard.
That's different. So like I had too much caffeine today. I am understanding.
Yeah. I mean, so things like that are hard for her. Right. So, I mean, and there's this huge debate in the autism community right now around like, should we all let all the people, have all the people who are autistic unmask? And we all mask in some ways. We all suppress our own desires in order to serve the community at some points. And so like, certainly like, it is harder for some kids to do the things, it is harder.
But don't we want to help them to overcome that hardness to become hardy a little bit? Easygoing and not rigidity. If we give in to their rigidity, they're not going to become flexible. And I agree. There is a distinction between neurodivergent children and that kind of stuff. This kid is not neurodivergent. This kid is a typically developing kid. I get it with other kids. This is why it's an individual approach, right?
Exactly. Right. So, I mean, it's so easy for us to say like, we know the right way. Right. And so this is, you and I both teach is filtering through what we know to be true of our child and ourselves. Right. And so I'm thinking about in my kid, this would be hard. And we didn't know at 4 that she was autistic. She just got her diagnosis at 10, but it would have been hard for her. But I also would never have put her in that situation to begin with. Right. So If we had people coming over, I would have reminded her, you know what? I know this is your special chair. And I know that you're used to being able to sit there. And some of your friends might sit there instead today. Well, how do we feel about that? How are we going to handle that if that happens? When that happened for us as a family, her chair was taken, my lap was her chair because that felt safe and secure for her, right? Because change and rhythm and routine was very rigid for her. She's continues to work on being flexible. And I don't think we teach our rigid kids to be more flexible by being rigid ourselves.
No, I get it. But what I'm talking about is the opposite problem when there are the flexible kids and we make them more rigid with our own approach. Do you know what I'm saying? Yes.
I do. Yes, absolutely. And so I think what we're talking about here is needing to figure out, okay, so let's not be extreme on either end of the spectrum. Let's find a place in the middle that's reasonable, that feels good to us and also, supports our kids being in community, because that like at 4, that's what this kid's jobs are, right? Their jobs are not to learn their letters. It's not to learn how to write. Their jobs are to learn how to be in community with their peers, right? That's why they go to preschool, to kindergarten, to 4K. I mean, that's what it should be. That's why they should be playing and not sitting at desks learning, is because they're developmentally, the skills they're gaining right now are how to be in community with one another, and when we focus primarily on, on that kind of that individual and that child-centric piece around my child and what are they getting, we miss out on the fact that we are social creatures. We are animals who are meant to be in community with one another.
Yeah. I think this is the first time I disagreed with you on something so strongly. And sorry, I had 3 cups of coffee. I usually don't drink so much all at once.
Anna, and we can be friends, right? And disagree. Yeah.
Yeah, no, we agree. But I think we understand each other. What I see, and I see it a lot, and it just drives me crazy when parents create problems where there are none.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally see what you're saying.
By hyper focusing, by having heard messages on Instagram, social media, and all those places, they think they need to validate the feelings, but not everything is about feelings.
And not everything has to be a 5-hour play on how it's okay to be disappointed too, right? Like it could be
a very quick moment.
It can be yeah, that makes sense. Come sit with me. It doesn't have to be a big production, right?
Yes, parents over-explain, especially gentle parents over-explain. They are too soft. They go too far because they feel bad. Just say no from the beginning. It's okay. Let them hear that word that we don't. And also, yes, I understand many of us grew up with people-pleasing tendencies because our needs were not met, our wants were not granted, blah, blah, blah. I get that. But I think we've gone too far as to raise a generation, and I'm saying big things, of self-centered kids.
I mean, so I will tell you,
it's like, it upsets me. Like, okay, people pleasing is also not good. Like, yes, I want you to have your favorite chair, but like also giving that favorite chair to someone is also a nice thing,
Yeah, an act of love and connection and care.
An act of love and connection. Yes, it doesn't have to be this either or approach.
I will tell you, so I just spent this past weekend with a group of 18-year-old kids who've gotten a really prestigious scholarship that I got when I was a 18-year-old kid. And there's a lot to be hopeful about this generation, right? But as a group, the entitlement and
self-centeredness,
it was shocking to me. All of the other grownups that were there were probably 30 of us kind of helping, take this group through kind of a leadership training. It was lots of fun and so many wonderful young people who are going to go out into the world and do so many wonderful things. And then there's this group of kids who just, we were at this kind of a cafeteria style meal and it was paper plates. There were trash cans everywhere. It was obviously a bus your own table situation. And maybe 75% of the kids had to be told, no one's coming to clean up after you. You got to put your own trash away, right? Like, I was shocked. Like, my 11 and 9-year-old would know. Like, okay, we're done eating, time to put our trash away, like it was mind boggling. I see what you're saying. I got to see firsthand this weekend what that looks like in 18-year-olds. It did not look good. They weren't caring towards each other either. They weren't on their phones when we were supposed to be having vulnerable discussions, it was not encouraging, that aspect of it.
So let's conclude this conversation. We can continue, but could you summarize, which you do masterfully, what we talked about so far?
We really delved into the differences in all these types of popular parenting and really some of the main risks of not showing up with firm and steady boundaries and presence for our kids, making sure that we are being authentic and true to ourselves and true to who our kids are, while helping them learn how to be in community and supporting them through the rough process of understanding other people's wants and needs, understanding their own, and feeling really able to navigate some of those things. So we kind of talked through some of the dangers of being too child-centric, too afraid of our children's negative feelings. And we highlighted the behavior stuff that can come out of that, some of the entitlement, some of the kind of self-focused piece of it, and some of the ways that can be really hard on the parents themselves, the way that parents can get burnout and work really way too hard at this. And I think we kind of settled into that space of that, that good enough, finding that middle ground is where it's at.
Yeah, I appreciate you so much, Laura. This was yet another fantastic conversation to be continued. Maybe we can take certain examples, dissect them, or give more practical advice in how to respond in a more balanced way to typical parenting situations. But this conversation to be continued. I appreciate you, your insights, and I disagreed with you today. Yay, that's a first one.
I mean, Anna, I love it that we can disagree. I think it's really important that we all know that none of us have the 100% right with the capital R way to do this, right? We all have our own backgrounds and experiences that we're filtering stuff through. And that doesn't mean that we can't be friends and colleagues and have really dynamic conversations about this. I think it's better when we don't see things exactly the same way. It's good. It's good for, and it's good modeling too, right? So we had a completely respectful and loving conversation while we disagreed. That's good.
Yes, great. Well, have a fantastic day. Happy birthday to your daughter. Enjoy the day. Make it special, but not too special. Perfect, but not too perfect. Just balanced.
Yes, just good enough. All right. Yes.
Whatever that means, folks, go figure it out. Okay. Take care. I'll see you next time.
Thanks, Anna.
That concludes today's conversation, my dear listener, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. What are your takeaways? Do you resonate with the message of this episode? What kind of parenting trends have you been observing? Do you think this episode will ruffle some feathers? Did I go too far with my criticism? I would love to hear from you. As always, you can get in touch by sending me an email, info@authenticparenting.com. You can call the number 732-763-2576 and leave a voicemail. And for international listeners, there is a free tool on the contact page of my website. Go to authenticparenting.com/contact and send me a message. If you want to connect with your fellow listeners from around the world, engage in meaningful conversations, get support and answers to your parenting questions, and stay up to date with authentic parenting, join our Facebook group. It's a support group for parents like you. I would appreciate if you could leave a review on Apple Podcasts or rate it on Spotify or wherever else you listen to the show. Ratings and reviews are really helpful in boosting the visibility of the podcast. Show your support by making a donation. To learn more and make a one-time or a monthly donation, go to authenticparenting.com/support. And as always, connect to the present moment, to yourself and your children. Until next week, I am Anna Seawald. Thank you so much for listening.